How we doing, GPSV podcast listeners? I am your co-host, Haley Shanley, and today I am so stoked to be joined by a man who is a true pioneer for snowcross racing and really snowmobile racing as a whole here in North America. He's really helped facilitate the growth of the sport over the years. The former racer is currently the president of CSRA Snowcross and one of the most influential voices the sport has. Welcome to the show, Ken Avann. Where the conversation goes today, I know we're going to be talking about the stadium racing days of snowcross and looking back at his career, the history of CSRA Snowcross, his hopes for the future, and of course previewing the 2022 season. Now CSRA just released their 2022 schedule. Things seemingly are back to normal and it is a stout one. So be on the lookout for that. We're going to be previewing this season as well as one of those stops, of course, the 40th edition of the Grand Prix Ski-Doo de Valcourt. We very much look forward to working with Ken and his team as well as SCMX coming up this February. Let's welcome and catch up with Ken Avann. Ken, thanks for joining me today. Tell us, where are you at in the world and what's keeping you busy at this point pre-season?
Well, right now everything's ramping up for the new snowcross season. You know, we've been kind of down last year, obviously, with the COVID situation. Internationally, it kind of took most of our events out last year with the exception of a couple. So we did get the guys racing a few times last year, but we're looking forward to a full 9-race schedule this year and getting back into a full swing. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, it is a stout schedule you guys just released. What's the response to the schedule been from both the fans and your athletes?
Well, the athletes, I haven't heard much from the fans as of yet because, you know, they still get wound up closer to the event starting up. But certainly the racers and the race teams are really excited to get going and have a full schedule. We're looking at 18 races for the pros and snow bikes, you know, so it's going to be a full schedule for those guys compared to what they had last year. And a lot on the line. We're sponsored by GM Trucks again this year, so we're going to have a new truck for the overall champion like we've done for the past few years. They get to drive around in a nice finale for a year while they're champion. So there's a fair bit on the line in addition to all the championships of our 22 classes that we have. So everybody's pretty excited. The kids, especially, you know, we've got a huge membership with kids. So we love expanding the kids' classes and doing those, you know, watching those guys go. So they're all really excited already. We've got, I think, 250 plus kids that race in our 120 and obviously 200 and transition classes. So we've got a big handful of racers there to look after. And I really enjoy working with those guys.
That's phenomenal to have the healthy racer count going into this year, especially after coming back from last year where things were really tough. How has the turnout been for both your snow bike and your side-by-side classes? Those have been recent additions in recent years.
So we've got those classes kind of put in place there just as support classes. We're not trying to build those into major big numbers, so to speak. It's just it's a nice sideshow for the fans. For both the snow bikes as well as the side-by-sides. And it's also works really well for our sponsors because it allows us to get Honda and Kawasaki and some of the other OEMs involved in the circuit. And most of the OEMs are doing snowmobiles are also doing side-by-side. So they love to have see their other products out there as well. And it's so much fun to watch them go. And the snow is a real equalizer, like with the side-by-sides. It doesn't matter if like new guys can come into the circuit to race their side-by-side. It doesn't really matter if you have a 300 horsepower Can-Am or a 100 horsepower Kawasaki or Honda. The snow, we don't allow studs in these races. So the snow itself is a real equalizer for the performance of the machines. So it comes down more to rider talent and just trying to select the proper tires to use based on what the conditions happen to be that day. And as you know, with snowcross, those conditions change by the hour. So lots of fun to watch the guys go with the side-by-sides. And then, we have one of the world's best snowcross race or snowbike racers up here with Yannick Boucher. And, a lot of top guys are coming from Canada, like Brock Hoyer and Matichuk and all those crazy guys that are so fast on the snow bike. So we like having the snow bike class for that reason. And those guys put on a great show. And sometimes, depending on the course layout, sometimes the snow bikes are putting in quicker times than the pro sleds are. So they are very, very fast when the guys know what they're doing on them. So it's fun to watch.
Most definitely, especially like you had mentioned, Yannick Boucher and Brock, and so many talents coming from Canada. So we're very fortunate when we get to see them down in the States. But at any rate, super great to see the schedule you guys have put forth. You personally, is there a particular venue or event that you are looking most forward to in 2022?
Well, we love going to Valcourt. So we can talk about that one to start with, because Valcourt is such an iconic event. It's like Eagle River, Spirit Mountain when it was up and going. Some of the events, there's all kinds of snowcross events and racing events that go on, but some of them are absolutely iconic events, and Valcourt is one of them. Been going for 40 years. You've been out there a few times, and I used to race there myself when I was young, and had so many great times and memories, and it is run so professionally, and it's so much fun to be part of that event as a competitor or as a fan, or even as like us to come in and sanction the event and help run it. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be able to be there and work with that Valcourt team, and also the SMX group. They're all very great to work with, and we love being part of that program. And this is the 40th year anniversary. It was supposed to happen last year, but didn't because of the C-19 situation. So we're looking forward to going there and helping them celebrate this year.
It's going to be a good time, that's for sure. Now, let's circle back to, you mentioned your racing career. Tell us more about that.
So I've been involved with snowmobile racing for 40 years, and I'm kind of dating myself age-wise, probably longer than that. I started racing when I was 16, and I started racing snow pro when I was 18. I raced the Yamaha SSR, and I raced for the Skidoo factory and the Polaris factory and the Yamaha factory. So I raced at a nice level for many years on the oval circuit. And then for 25 years, I was involved in oval racing, and I was on the board of directors for the OSRF circuit up here. And I was watching, I was a motocross rider as well, so I really liked the rough stuff. And I liked the idea of the snowcross concept, which I was watching in Europe. And when it started to move into the US back in the early 90s, I wanted to see it happen up in Canada as well. So I went after the board of directors for the oval circuit and said, we should look at snowcross. I think it's the up and coming thing. And we did a couple of small, way back then, we didn't have the suspension that we have in the sleds now. So we did a few snowcross type events. It was more like a Le Mans type course at the time with smaller jumps and that type of thing. Nothing like we have today. But anyhow, we did a few of those, but they didn't really want to expand on it. And I really wanted to go on it. So I thought there was some great potential. The oval circuit at the time seemed to be kind of going away because Bombardier Skidoo was kind of dominating the oval racing scene with the twin track machines. And the other manufacturers were starting to step out of racing. So I thought that with snowcross, this made sense that it related more to what the consumer was buying. So I would expect that I expected the OEMs to jump back in and support that type of racing. So I started my own racing series up here in '93. In the very first race we did at Mount St. Louis, we had Tony Heikkinen show up and some of the top races out of the States. And we had over 200 participants in the very first race. And then from there, we just started going more races the following season, and more the following season after that. 30% of our racers would come in out of Michigan. And there was no race circuit in Michigan yet. Keep in mind, snowcross is just starting. There was no snowcross in Eastern USA at the time. 30% of the riders coming to Ontario were coming from Michigan. So I decided to start a circuit in Michigan. I started a series there as well, and it was called ASRA. So we had about 8 events going on here in Ontario, about 7 or 8 events going on in Michigan, and we had 1,000 racers combined in the two circuits back in around 1999, 2000. And then at that time, I also launched the indoor stadium tour. So we started racing in the indoor buildings, and the Air Canada Centre here was the very first one we did in '99. And then we, after getting that event underway, we were able to, it was successful. It was very successful. So then it opened the door for us to step into the bigger stadiums. So we went into the Pontiac Silverdome and the Metrodome, the Fargo Dome. We built that circuit up to about, I think, 6 events. It went on for a couple of years, and it was so much fun. It was so intense, and the energy inside the buildings when you had all the top riders in there was crazy. We had one event at Pontiac Silverdome, where we had over 30,000 fans showed up in a 4-hour period. So the place was just going absolutely crazy. It was one of the biggest events for a snowmobile race with true numbers that ever happened. So we had Tucker Hibbert was there and Blair Morgan, all the top riders were in there, and it was really cool and really intense. But it ended up for me, I was still working full time for General Motors, so it was really, really tough to try to produce those venues, as well as the 7 or 8 we had going in Ontario and 7 or 8 in Michigan. And we didn't really have proper sponsorship to keep the indoor stadium tour going. The events were very, very expensive to make happen. Just keep in mind, you'd have to roll into those events in a 24-hour period. You would fill the place with snow. You would do the event, and you'd turn it back to the way you found it. And that all happened within 24 hours. So you're talking 50 or 60 dump trucks lined up. The logistics for it was crazy. But anyhow, it was really intense. It was really fun. It was a really great time and many, many great memories to have started that and seen those events through. But I just decided at the time we were working with a WSA in the States and then WPSA, and they weren't too happy with me being in Michigan. So they were trying to kind of push me out, so to speak. So I ended up just basically packing in the ASRA circuit and handed it off to the WSA. And then I came back into Ontario and just looked after things on this side of the border, which was, we've got such a huge market here that was plenty for me to tackle, So I just did that, came back to Canada and stayed here and just kind of focused on our Canadian circuit. And that's where we sit today, 28 years later. So
wow,
28 years we started doing this now. Yeah, that's lots of history there. That was it in the short notes, so to speak. But that's where I came from. We basically started the sport here in Canada, and then also in Michigan, and then the indoor stadium tour, and then just backed off and came back here and we're settled in and enjoying what we're doing. So it's really good.
That's awesome. Now, what's your official title? What is your role nowadays with CSRA?
Well, you can call me whatever you want, I guess, because we kind of. So I'm president of the business, obviously, but they call me race director. So I'm doing the same thing as Carl would be doing at the ISOC races, and just kind of overseeing the whole thing. I've kind of stepped back a little bit. I've got such a great team of employees. Some of my staff have been with me since day one for 28 years, so they really know what they're doing. And it's great to have a professional group working with, which is 30 of us that run the events each weekend here in Ontario. And they all know their deal, so I just let them do their thing. And I just kind of design the track and help the, make sure that the spacing and the jumps and all that kind of thing are kind of correct. And we have a groomer operator that is really well-versed on building the tracks now. He's a motocrosser and he's been doing the events for us and tracks for a number of years. So he can pretty much do whatever we ask him to do. And the nice thing about snowcross is you work with snow conditions that you have, and you can make the track go left, right, around things and over things and that type of thing. So it's a little bit easier to build a course than it is an oval track where you're really dictated to by the shape of the facility as well as the weather. So generally you can pull off a snowcross event whether the weather's good or bad, as long as you truck the snow in or make the snow or whatever the case may be. So most of the events happen, and once in a while we'll lose one or two, or maybe in a year, but not very often.
Well, I'm super curious to ask you some more about the stadium races, because I never had the opportunity to go to one. So back to like the Pontiac Dome, for example, how was it with the snow conditions in there? Because I would imagine that it could be a great deal warmer in the stadium trying to preserve that track for the event. So how was the track maintenance process there?
Well, we would ramp the temperature of the building down a little bit. So it would be, you still want to be comfortable for the fans. So it would be maybe 60 degrees, 50 or 60 degrees. But as I said, everything happens so quick that like you're in and out in 24 hours. So by the time the snow starts to melt, the event's done and you're out of there. Mm-hmm. So the actual melting of the snow was very minimal. Like there was no, like the floor was wet underneath, obviously, from snow melting, but there was no kind of flooding. None of that stuff was going on. And we trucked in about 400 loads to make the course indoors in one of those stadiums.
Wow.
The coolest event, one of the coolest ones, was the very first one we did. So we went to the Air Canada Centre in Toronto before it was even built. we were talking about it. We talked to the team that was doing the building and going to operate the building, the management team, and we said, hey, we want to do a snowmobile race in your building. And at the time, they wanted to showcase the new latest and greatest hockey arena. And they said, yeah, let's do it. That'll be awesome. So they had no idea what we were going to do. They, you know, we blew snow at the Ontario place across the street, had all the snow piles done. We trucked all the snow in. We had it all done in and out of there in 24 hours. It went really good. They had, the nice thing about the stadiums is you've got all the pyro and the lasers and the crazy, wonderful energy with the music. We had 13,000 fans. And that was close to being sold out because we had to kill about 25 rows of seats above the racing surface in case there was any kind of an incident, just for safety. So the rest of it was basically filled up. But the energy was phenomenal. And we had Blair Morgan and all the top riders came. And it was so fun watching Blair because he was such a fabulous rider at the time. He was top dog. And when I built the courses in the stadiums, I was really trying to screw Blair Morgan up bad. I wanted to try to make a course that he couldn't just dominate on, you know. So we would do whoop sections, huge whoops, crisscross them, so you couldn't take off straight, couldn't land straight. But the guy was so phenomenal that he would take off, turn the sled in the air, land it. It just made it look like butter, right? It was so unbelievable. He would come out of the arena. Hockey rink's a small area to race sleds in. These were like 800 mods. So you're talking major horsepower inside a very tiny area. The roost was the length of the race course, basically. But anyhow, Blair would go around the one end and he would launch it, coming out of there. We had a huge jump. He would basically come out of corner 2 and land in corner 3 and turn and go again. That's how tight it was. So really tight, but it was like a wrestling match. We ran 6 sleds at a time, but the energy was just so intense because of the noise and the music and the snow flying and the color and everything. It was tremendous. It was really good. The next year, they loved the event, so they let us do it a second time. So we went on there in year 2, and the same basic thing. It was a great venue. When we went to leave, we had this big snow blower that would actually blow the snow into the trucks, and figured we can get out of there earlier because there was a Raptors game, basketball game coming in 24 hours after we started the Snowcross event. It had to be back to basketball floor, so to speak, within 24 hours. So we did the Snowcross event, and then we had the snowblower in there, and it picked up a cement parking curb that was in the snow. We didn't know it was in there. Jammed up the snowblower. So we got way behind on getting the snow out of the building. And I believe the fine for the Air Canada Centre was $1 million fine if they didn't have the floor for the Raptors game ready to go on time. It's live TV and everything, right? So the Raptors and the other team playing them had to go practice at University of Toronto instead of there and be part of the game. And then we called all our staff back in to get the building ready. We were laying down the floor for the Raptors game and everything. We got it all done with 20 minutes to spare. So within 20 minutes of the fine, 24-hour period, the thing going live, we had it done and we were out of there. So it all turned out, but it scared them a little bit.
Yeah.
But anyhow, from that point on, the news about it and the vibe allowed us to go into the stadiums, because prior to that, the stadiums wouldn't let us come in. They said, there's no way you're going to fill our building with snow. They had the same thoughts as you just did, where it's going to all melt, we're going to have flooding, it's going to be a mess. So then after we did that Air Canada Centre venue, it opened the door for us to go into the big stadiums. You know, we did those for a couple of years. And it was great. And it built up, the largest it built up to was that year we had our fans at the Silver Dome. It was over 30,000, and they actually turned 7,000 away at the gate because there wasn't a lot of pre-season, pre-tickets sold for the event. And that's very typical with our sport. Fans don't necessarily buy in advance a lot. They show up at the gates and they come piling in if the weather is good and whatever else might be, right? Most of the snowcross promoters are aware of that. But the stadiums weren't aware of it. They didn't think anybody was going to show up. So they cut back their staff, and everybody came. And the streets, the roadways leading in were just jammed with cars. And we were an hour and a half into the show before, and there's still thousands of people outside trying to get in. So the cops actually, and then they're starting to get kind of grumpy. So the cops actually shut the gates down outside and didn't let those people in. So that was great, but it was kind of not great at the same time. But that was the pinnacle basically of snowcross. That's when racing was crazy for ISOC and for that time it was WSA and for us and the sport in general. That was kind of the peak of the sport. And then now it's kind of tapered off, and it's still very, very solid, but it's not at that level anymore. You know, that's when we had all the factories were involved, including Yamaha. They had factory back riders. They all had 7 or 8 true factory supported teams run out of the factory, right? But now they've gravitated now more to supporting super teams or big teams. It's not really a factory effort like it used to be. But you know, the sport is still fabulous. I still love it, and plan on plugging away here for a few more years yet. So.
Most definitely. Like you had said, those were, and everyone I think would agree and echo those statements that was the pinnacle. And I think as promoters and series, we're always looking for ways to reinvigorate the sport and get more people excited about it again. So just out of curiosity, I know you said it was just the expense alone that came with these stadium events. Have there been any talks with Carl, so for like a collaboration between CSRA and Snowcross, or even just in general, even with CSRA alone getting back in stadiums? Is that ever in the future?
But as far as working with Carl, Carl and I work very close together. We always chat about things and creating the rules and everything else for the sport. And we chat quite often about going back and forth. What do you think of this or that? But it's much tougher now doing the border crossing with the teams than it used to be, especially with the COVID situation. And now the borders are so tight on everything, right? So it's if any of the team members have any kind of DUI or any kind of a charge that can't come across, and it's just a little bit, it's a bit more awkward now to bring teams back and forth across the border than what it used to be years ago. So that makes it much more difficult. It can still happen, but it's pretty tough because he's got such a great series going there right now. The ISOC circuit, they've got dedicated venues on dedicated weekends. And there isn't really a lot of additional time to be going anywhere else. And it's the same with us. We've got like 9 races. There's only really in central Ontario, because of the weather, we've got 6, a span of about 6 weekends where we've got prime snow in central Ontario. Other than that, we have to be north or at a ski resort. And Carl's kind of in the same way. Like if you want to do an event in early December or November, you have to be a ski hill. And if you want to do an event in end of March or early April, you have to be a ski hill. And the ski hills won't let you in until maybe before Christmas, because Christmas break is their big moneymaker. And then their second moneymaker is March break. So they're not going to let you in there between those 2 periods. So you're in there before Christmas or after March break. And he's already got such great events set up in those timeframes with Lake Geneva, and this year the finals in Michigan. And we're the same way. We've got our national finals at Horseshoe Resort and Chicopee Ski Resort the weekend before that. So there's not really dates that we want to give up a weekend to collaborate and create another new event. But that's not to say that it will never happen. Like we've had the ISOC circuit here before. They came to an event in Sarnia, Ontario. Unfortunately, it was a bad snow year, so it didn't work out that great. But it was difficult moving the TV crews in across the border and just the work visas, and it's so difficult now. That's the big problem we have about collaborating together in that way. But other than that, I'd love to. There's nothing I'd rather do than have an event like in Barrie, one of our bigger venues, Barrie, Ontario, and have all the top riders here. It'd be so amazing for our fans, But it's pretty difficult.
It is, definitely. That was super insightful to me you're right. It does have to depend on the venue at the time of year, and both of our schedules makes it very tough. And I say I work with ISOC too. So, but no, at any rate, it's really good to see the amount of talent that you guys have, and similarly here in the States, and to have them go back and forth from time to time. Well, let me ask you about some of the pro riders and the talents that you're expecting to return in 2022. Which riders do you have your eye on in your top divisions?
Well, it's tough, like we don't really have a single rider anymore that stands out over and above the rest of the field. Like when we had Ian Hayden, and we've had when Blair was running, he used to run here and also in the U.S. kind of back. He just ran wherever at the time. And then when Ian Hayden was here, he was 7-time national champion up here. There's occasionally a rider that stands out and above everybody else, and the other guys are trying to beat that particular person. And right now we've got so much young talent that because of our junior programs and all the kids that we have moving up into the sport, pro light and pro ranks, the talent there is phenomenal as far as the numbers of kids that we have that can potentially win a race. We really don't know. Like last year, we had 3 races and the course was brutally rough. So we knew it was going to be a short season, so we did it like a 24-25 lap race. It was very, very physical on the guys, and guys that we thought were going to win didn't, and some other kids popped up in there that were talented riders, podium type riders, but they dominated. Like so Isaac St. Ange and Taylor McCoy, the St. Ange racing team. They both got out front. They were teammates, and they just kind of ran away from the other guys. And I think it really woke a lot of people up as far as the conditioning these 2 kids were in compared to the rest of the field. The season was so short, no one really got a chance to get their sleds sorted out or anything last year. It was kind of tough. So going into this year, I don't know. I'm really excited to see what we're going to have happen this year between those 2 guys that were so dominant last year, and we've got a whole bunch of other riders. Like I don't know, we got 10 or 12 guys that can win right now in the pro class, and then the same with our pro light class. But some of these kids that are like, we jumped into pro light at 14 years of age, and are able to podium. So there's some really good talent down coming into the lower end of these classes that can win. And I really can't give you I really don't have a prediction of who's going to win this year. It's going to have to get an event or 2 under a plate to answer that question.
Mm. Now, in the realm of all things snowcross racing in Canada, of course, CSRA, but also SCMX, and some of the other circuits, what role does CSRA play in the Canadian snowmobile racing scene?
So CSRA, we're kind of set up as a national circuit, so to speak, only because we're going into Quebec, and we have the series in Ontario, and Quebec and Ontario for snowcross racing in Canada are the markets. When you get out west, anywhere basically from Manitoba to Saskatchewan, Alberta, then you get into the mountains, and it's a mountain type sledge. There's not much snowcross going out there right now. So as far as the sheer numbers of snowmobilers, there's more in Ontario and in Quebec than the rest of the country combined. So that's where our racers are coming from. So anyhow, the CSRA kind of is the national circuit for racing. That's why they have us come to Valcourt and be part of that program. And then basically from there, we're basically hanging in Ontario the entire time, just because we're well established here, and that's where most of the racers are coming from. So we have about, between our pros and our kids and everything else in the snow bikes, just under 400 members, racers on our circuit. And I think SCMX has about 60 to 80 and around there. So we don't have very many of the Quebec racers coming here to race against the Canadian guys, because most of the Quebec riders are coming from way north Quebec, up near Chibougamau and those areas. So for them to come down this far to race in the Ontario circuit, where it's a 10 or 15-hour drive, it's pretty tough for them to come and do that, just because of the cost of it and everything else. And they race a little bit different than what we do here. Some of the rules are slightly different. So we don't have a lot of collaboration between the other events, with the exception of Valcourt. And then for Valcourt, we just plan from year to year to year to work together. And we run under ISR rules for that particular event, and with our tech teams. And if we have a situation in tech between the 2 racer groups, instead of us trying to hash it out, we'll just send the situation off to ISR, let them make a decision on it. So there's no pressure or on us or the race teams. When we go into Valcourt, obviously it's a Skidoo sponsored event. All the big Skidoo racers are there. So for me, it's a little bit difficult. I have to treat all our racers the same. It doesn't matter with me whether they're riding on an Arctic Cat or Polaris or whatever. We have to treat them all equally. So sometimes if I have to make a call on a Skidoo rider, I get a little bit of flack for that, but we just have to treat everybody equally. And I think in the end, everybody respects that. And they know, they know me now and how strict I am on the rules and everything else, just so that it's fair for everybody, because that's what it needs to be. And it seems to work out really good. So.
Mm-hmm.
don't know if I answered your question 100% there. Sometimes I'm going off in different directions, but that's basically what goes on with the circuit there.
So great catching up with Ken Avann. I feel like he's one of those personalities you could just talk to for another hour or two on end on all things winter sports and snowmobile. A great man who has done so much for snowmobile racing to move the sport forward year after year, and I know he has a great team behind him at CSRA. We cannot wait to work with him again for the big 40th annual GPSV. That is February 11th, 12th, and 13th. Also in snowcross action, we will be joined by SCMX. It's going to be a great weekend of racing. I cannot wait to see you there. For all episodes of the GPSV podcast, you can find us on Spotify, so go hit subscribe, as well as on YouTube for video episodes. You can also find these on our Facebook page. Be sure to give GPSV a follow on all of your favorite social media, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and the works. I'm Haley Shanley for the GPSV podcast. Thank you so much for listening.